Architecture plays a major factor in terms of how to have a greenhouse that can grow year-round. This geodesic dome, for instance, is very efficient in terms of energy retention. So even though it was in the negatives outside last night, and it's about 15 degrees at 10:30 a.m. right now outside. The sun's up, it's warming up fast, but here's a pumpkin that is doing very well inside. And as you can see, lemon tree, etc. Normally I keep this greenhouse, the vents closed. I only recently shut those greenhouse vents. The reason in the wintertime we need to keep those greenhouse vents shut is because water will run off the glazing and it'll actually fill up the wood with puddles of moisture. The problem with that is the thermal cycling. Repeating that process day after day results in rot. So what I had to do here is pressure treat everything. I blew off the original oil-based paint as much as was flaking off, and then I applied with a sprayer some Cabot stain, and there's a lot of overspray. It affects the transmissibility of this, but that was the only way I could reasonably do that to protect this wood. The puddles of water previously just soaked into the various cracks in the paint, and it accelerated the slow progress for rot after only a few years. The other thing it would do is the water would then stream off into the various cracks and then fester in those locations. So the paint very easily stripped off due to thermal cycling, even though it's an oil-based paint. The solution is up front, don't use standard wood. I just ended up using spruce on this, thinking that painting it with an oil-based paint would be good enough, but that simply is not good enough for a greenhouse. Greenhouses just have too much moisture and too many thermal cycles in a given 24-hour period. And that is why these particular vents have been closed off just for the spring here so I could plant. That thermal cycling issue is why the vents normally are left open. However, this year I wanted to get an earlier start, and in combination with that Cabot stain I sprayed all the exposed wood with, I'm hoping I can get a couple months with the water and the thermal cycles without exacerbating the rot. One mistake I did make was to allow my goats in here to eat all the produce, and they really ravaged all of the insulation and tinfoil. They'd use their horns and just take it out. So the solution I have is to either replace the tinfoil with new tinfoil or to paint it. This is just a sample to see what it looks like. The other thing I did was line the base with some 2-layer polycarbonate. You can see where the goats broke through. There was a polyurethane layer there before. Not only did they puncture that, but they went and damaged the insulation behind it. The other issue I had on this was using an H-channel for the joints. The H-channel has a tendency to crack over time. You really need to use something a little beefier. I'm going to take the time to go through and put this trim over the entire greenhouse. It'll take a lot. It'll take 120 of these pieces to do that. But by doing that, I can eliminate all the leaks inside, keep the insulation secure, and prolong the use of this greenhouse. One idea I have for the long-term productivity of this greenhouse or its use is after the steel is all in place, as the wood rots, go ahead and mount tubing on the exterior of this, bend it to the corners, and that way you can reinforce the skeleton from the outside and use galvanized steel so you can prolong its useful life. So the process of using trim as well as the potential for using galvanized tubing on the exterior of this dome, it allows us to use it for potentially ever as long as we maintain it. But the real lessons learned, just don't use standard wood, even spruce, or I should say even cedar or redwood. You shouldn't use that. Bigelow Brook Farm is a classic example. They used redwood on that and it just melted itself. I think they used cedar or redwood, but it was gone within 5 years. The real solution, unfortunately, is either chemically treated wood or just start with steel. Downside of steel, it's a lot more expensive, a lot harder to work with. But if you want a dome that's going to last in harsh climates like this, if you're down someplace a little warmer, not a big deal. But up here in central Idaho at a mile high next to 2 mile high peaks, you really need to have something a little bit more robust than standard painted wood. Hey, thanks for watching this video and you have a good day.